All right, everybody. Whoa, that is loud. I will try not to yell. I'm sorry. Thanks for coming today. I am Josh Anderson, co-host of the Metacast. This is not Bob Galen. This is Eric Hannan. Those of you that know Bob Galen, Bob was pulled away by a family emergency. He had to head to New York last minute. So I scrambled last minute, and Eric Hannan was good enough to join me. He will tell you that he was not the first person I called.
I was last.
He's been given. I didn't tell you what number.
He didn't tell me, which is why I know I was last.
You just assumed the worst. You should not do that. As Agile coaches, we teach our teams not to do that, right? You should assume the positive.
Well, should I say do as I say, not as I do, kind of like you do with whip limits?
Wow. Okay, so I've known Eric for a long time. I will admit to those of you right now that there was a moment when I should have hired Eric and I didn't. That was a mistake. The way I framed it this morning as I was thinking about it, I had a choice between Michael Jordan and LeBron James. I grew up in Akron, so I went, oh, LeBron, because he's from Akron, right? I should have also hired Michael Jordan, but I didn't. Eric was great enough to stay in touch and say, hey, why didn't you hire me? And we struck a friendship over the past 3 years.
4 years.
As we just met and talked and became friends. And he's really, really good at what he does. He's the only person that I know that has been asked by the executives of his company to transform the entire company to Agile. So he knows what he's talking about. He's done things that many of us had not had a chance to do. So today's session is, actually the whole day is about being practical. There's nothing I find more practical than answering the questions you have. So this session is really driven by you guys. We collected cards. If you came in late and have a question and would like it answered, raise your hand. I will pass you a card and we will get it answered. Eric is playing product owner. So he is sorting our cards and he's going to queue up questions for us to answer. We have 48 minutes. I've tried to keep the intro long. I will circle back on some things later, but we have 47 minutes to answer as many questions as possible. If there are things where we try and dig in deep, I'll probably stop myself because there's 20 cards over there. So I want to cover as much possible. If we come back and we have more time, then we'll dig into some things a bit deeper. Okay, Mr. Product Owner, are you ready? Do you have the number one item on our backlog of questions to be answered?
I do, and I'm going to take a little bit of it was only one, but I'd love to start with this as your frame for answering the rest of the questions so people know how you think or how we think about Agile.
Yeah, we think. That's good. So the first question is define Agile. Is Scrum Agile? I have transitioned over the past year as defining Agile as just a way to do work. So often it gets jammed in the hole of software engineering. But as I mentioned about Eric and his team trying to take accounting Agile and HR Agile and all those things Agile. No one's home.
What we have here.
Really, it's let's do the most important thing and let's get those things done as effectively and efficiently as possible. That's the essence of it. There's all these frameworks out there, but when you keep that mindset, I find that teams become more effective and efficient. So often, frameworks, there might have been a question about SAFe in there, gets in the way of doing work, and we're doing things for the sake of process as opposed to taking the thing off the top of the list and moving it from left to right. That's what it boils down to me. As far as is Scrum Agile, I think it supports Agile. I don't think it is Agile. It's a framework to get work done from top to bottom, left to right. I try and keep things as simple as possible. I always default to Scrum because it's simple, and again, it just boils down to how do we move this work from left to right? Okay, I'll step back.
I think that's a great answer.
Good. Cool, we agree for once. That's not normal.
That won't happen again today.
Nope.
All right, so one of the biggest questions we have is around product owners.
Okay.
And helping product owners.
Helping them, or should we get rid of them?
Well,
what should we? And I'm like the director
of product owners.
So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that's going to be weird. All right, so product owners, how do we help them? What are the challenges that product owners are having?
So one of the challenges they're having is what is the best way to promote that the product owner meet often to prioritize functionality?
That the product owner meet often?
Product owners. there's an S on that.
Let me see that. So is this like an Agile coach that's having product owners that are just kind of being lazy? Does anybody know who wrote this? Who raised their hand? Somebody wrote this. Come on, I didn't write it. Eric didn't write it. So I'm going to make an assumption here that you are an Agile coach or a Scrum Master and you don't feel like your product owners are being effective at providing a prioritized backlog of work. What we just talked about, a list from top to bottom of the most important things. If they're not doing that and you're allowing that to happen, you're not doing your job as an Agile coach. Your job is to help the team by making sure that the work is prioritized, ready to rock and roll. Sometimes, many times, unfortunately, people put product owners in roles when they shouldn't be because maybe they were in the job, Agile's changing things, they don't know what to do with this person, and the worst thing people do is they treat product owner roles like a dumping ground of, oh, we'll just make them a product owner. It's a really, really hard job. Really hard. I think it's the hardest in Scrum. They need help. You're nodding your head. Are you a product owner? No? Okay, but you know they need help. Okay, I thought it was like, please, somebody help me. And there's not, like, it's hard to, like, go become a good product owner. Where do you go? Where would you go to become a great product owner? Who would you go talk to? Yeah, you talk to the customers to find out what they need, but how do you get good at the craft of being a product owner? There's not a lot of places. There's not a lot of resources. It's kind of this, like, desert wasteland. We pay a lot of attention to teams and things like that, but the product owner queuing up the work, making sure we do the most important thing, doesn't get the love necessary. So as Agile coaches, as Scrum Masters, we need to help them and support them. So help them. Work with them. Prioritize the work. Sit down. Have a cram session. Say, let's do this together. Don't point your finger and say, hey, you aren't doing a good enough job. Help them get it done. It's really, really hard.
If Bob were here, he would probably tell you he wrote, actually he wouldn't tell you, he did write an Agile product ownership book.
Yes.
It's a great way. One thing I would add on to that would be help the product owners see the problem. If they're not getting together and prioritizing things together, what problem is that causing? What are the pain that the teams are having? Help walk them through, here's where we're at, and then, like Josh said, hey, get together, let's do a prioritization section. Let's go through and walk through the backlog and work with them, which I think actually goes very nice into this next question of what are some techniques to manage multiple sources of backlog items. So we have, if we're getting product owners together, we have a lot of different backlog items. How do we manage this? What are some techniques that we can use to do that?
So I believe a great backlog is informed by both the voice of the customer and the voice of the market. Also, just kind of your intuition. I don't like it when it's all intuition, but you need to understand what support is struggling with. What are customers calling in that they're really unable to do? How can you unlock some of the problems that are happening there? Where is sales struggling? Why are they losing? Why are we not able to close some of those big deals? Is it an enterprise deal? So this group of three, I'm going to keep pointing them because I worked with them for a while. I'm sorry. Maybe it's an enterprise thing. Maybe we need to build these features to go win the enterprise deals. You need to talk to them and understand that and understand the problems, because oftentimes what happens is somebody will come to you with a solution. They won't come to you with a problem. They will say, hey, we need a calendar in our product just because we're losing sales. So you need to ask the tough questions of, well, what are they trying to do? What problem is that calendar going to solve? And maybe you don't even need a calendar. Maybe you just need improved notifications or something like that. So don't just take it at face value, because you know what? They're not product folks. They're spending all their time trying to sell things. That's another really hard job that I can tell you I am not good at. So I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. But what you need to do is engage with them, take that feedback, and then craft a backlog as far as things that are most important for your company. And it most likely isn't what they're asking for. So you have to be comfortable enough and strong enough to say, I hear you. We're going to solve that problem like this.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So when would you recommend the concept of a chief product owner, or like, scaling, multiple conflicts between product owners and things like that?
Yeah. So the question was, when would you recommend a chief product owner? I'm going to say never. I think there should be someone that is responsible for building a great team of product owners. That's a hard enough job. I would encourage and be excited about a group of product owners that are fighting for things that they believe in. And what I would do as that leader of that group is force them to come up with some sort of data that it just makes sense why things should go in this order. I think if you work hard enough as a product team, you will get things defined well enough to where, yeah, we should do it in that order. I don't like it because that means stuff for my product is number 5 instead of number 3, but I understand why. I don't believe in a chief product owner as being the judge and the jury. Like I don't like that, because then people take the easy way out. Like, oh, well, I'll just go talk to Andrew. Andrew, he's on my side. He gets it. He worked on my product like 5 years ago, so he'll kind of be on my side. So I don't want to go do that. I want us to, as a group, get to a point to where we can logically define the order of work that we're going to do. I might not like the order, but I can at least understand. And the reason why that's important is because I need to be able to go back to my team and say, hey, that thing that we're working on, we're actually not going to be able to do it, but here's why. Here's why the thing we're going to work on instead is more important. Then you really understand the why. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I think what's important to the answer that you just gave there is the structure that you're operating in, or that you would want to operate in without a chief product owner, is one that has autonomous teams that are empowered, that's more of a flat organization. If you're in a hierarchical structure, if you don't have a voice of the product owner at that highest level, that might be a case where, because of the environment that you're in, that you may need that to fight for the values and the workings of the product owner. So I agree with you that I think there could be an environmental situation where you might need to have one if you don't have the ideal situation.
See, I don't like the idea, but I agree with it, right? Like that's a good answer. I don't like it. I would not aspire to work at a company like that, but I understand sometimes you have to do things that might not be the way you want it to achieve the goal that you're having. I would, over time, try and get it to a point to where we don't need that function, but that might be the right answer.
One other thing on this, the question about managing multiple sources of backlog items, I'm assuming this means that you're getting backlog items from a bunch of different places throughout the organization. Is that, I don't know who wrote this.
I did, yes. We have infrastructure, architecture, the multiple sources of requirement. Oh, thank you.
There you go.
And so how to manage with this? Basically, it sounds like you're asking, how do you manage with this vast array of different types of? Yeah, so I think that what's important here is to develop some kind of rubric or model that helps you evaluate what is the business value, what's the impact, what's the cost of delay. All these things, you're basically you're evaluating these things the same way through the same lens, so you can make a priority decision. I know there's a lot of great techniques. I'm not a product owner, so I can't speak at length about that, but there are some ways that I know that you can create some kind of rubric to help you evaluate different kinds of value in the same way, so you can make priority decisions.
So one heads up, technical people building backlogs, we're not good at it. It will take 6 months of very heavy-handed forcing engineers to write stories well and have good business value to find behind them. I would expect at least 6 months to make that transition, and you've got to be pretty heavy-handed that we're not going to accept any work going into this backlog of things without it having business value attached to it. And you'll get an engineer, but it's refactoring. We have to do it. There's too many bugs. Like, okay, well, yeah, there's lots of bugs everywhere, but why would we fix those bugs instead of fix these bugs? And the best weapon you can use is say, you would never accept a story from a product owner without good acceptance criteria, right? In fact, I've seen you in refinements get upset when there's a user story that we're trying to refine and there's no AC, yet the stories you bring are like one line, and it's like refactor the data service or something like that. So don't allow that to happen. Hold them to the same standards as they hold product owners, and that will work. It's kind of a pokey thing, but you got to do it.
I think the last thing I'll say to this is, product owners, your secret weapon is talking to your stakeholders frequently. explaining to them the thought process, how you're working through things, why you said no. If you had to say no, look, I know I can't get this sprint, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to place this a couple sprints from now, and here's why. Oftentimes people just need to be heard. They need to know that you have heard that they need something. And if you can just explain your process, how you're going through them, how you're going through it, and making them feel like they're the most important person in the world, even though you're saying no to them, it will go a long, long way.
Okay.
So I'm going to pivot us now.
Sounds good.
To talk about communication. So there is one last question about communication from product owners, but we also have a lot of questions about team communication.
Okay.
So I think this is a great opening. How do I convince project managers and product owners to prioritize what I think is important? I'm a user experience person on the team. I need the product owner to start prioritizing things that I think as a UXer is important. Josh, help me. How do I figure this out?
I'm going to feel like I'm on a repeat, but it's really defining the why and the business value. A good product owner, a good product person should reject anything that you just throw out there of, hey, we should do this because I think so. You should just be asking why 1,000 times. There are teams that really, really get unhappy with me. In fact, there's one right now that's very unhappy with me because I just keep asking why and asking the questions that, you know what, they would ask somebody else. But those questions are hard. So, okay, Mr. and Mrs. UX, why should we change this drop-down? What value does that add to our customer? They might not jump, well, it's not a value to our customer, but it'll save us X number of hours every sprint because this drop-down is really busted and it always breaks our tests and all these things. Okay, but you can equate that to if we do that over the next year, we're going to gain 45 hours of time that we could be building other things. So sometimes you have to coach them along the way about how to define business value. It's easy when something is, hey, we're going to build something that's going to increase the sales for our customers by 5%. That's going to translate into them making more money, which means they're going to spend more money with us. Cool. That's easy. It's hard when there's a drop-down that's broken. And maybe that person has realized our 5 teams are fixing the builds at least 3 times a day. Those builds take 15 minutes each. It's slowing down 40 people. So you do the math of if we fix this drop down, we save 40 hours a year of time. That's a person week. What can a person build? All those things. So you've got to coach them along the way. Again, it's just getting back to business value. But oftentimes, like I talked about with the tech folks, they just want to say, well, we need to fix this. And so often it's like, well, trust me. You hired me, trust me. Well, okay, well, trust us that we're trying to do the same thing. We need to prioritize this work. Is that an approving nod or a disapproving?
I'll give you a B+.
Okay. Hey, that's good. I'll take it.
So how do you make teams communicate among each other? How do you make teams communicate among each other for engineering work during meetings and afterwards? My people aren't talking, Josh. My engineering team's not talking. How do I get them to talk?
Fire them.
I bet they'll talk after that.
Yeah, they will talk. They will talk. Yes. I'm going to go. So I feel there's a book that I use called Debug. See, he's laughing. I know Gabe's laughing. Software is a team sport. There's a book that I use called Debugging Teams. And I use that to educate teams on this is what a good team looks like. So oftentimes we say to engineers or teams, hey, you need to be better. You need to talk more. But they don't know how. It's not their fault. No one's shown them. So I use this book as a framework, just like .NET or Java or Scrum, of, hey, this is what good teams look like. This is what healthy teammates look like. This is how they talk. So I show them this is the what. It's just like a user story. This is the what. This book defines what a good team looks like. And we treat it like it's 3rd grade. We do a book club, and we read a few chapters. We get in a circle, and we talk about it. And now we all have a common understanding of what good looks like. So we know what that finish line looks like. Okay, cool. We know what that finish line looks like. How do we get there? How many engineers do you know that are really good at getting up and talking to people? Not a lot. Okay, so now you give them the how. Crucial Conversations is one of my favorite books. because we get passionate about building things. We get passionate about we need to upgrade to .NET version 4.8 just because we should. But it's going to be expensive and take a lot of time and create a lot of bugs. But how do I go talk to Eric, who's my boss or who's the chief PO, that doesn't want to do this technical debt stuff? That's a high-stakes conversation. How do I have a good, healthy discussion with him? How do I convince him? Crucial Conversations is the how. Again, we read it as a team. We sit in a circle. We talk. We figure out how to talk to each other. We figure out how to argue in a healthy way with each other. So I use those tools. Again, I'm big on frameworks. Those are the frameworks that I use to teach people how to talk when they've never been shown how. Assume they don't know how. Because if they did know how, they probably would be doing it. And it's not good enough to just say, hey, talk more. It's just like a coach saying, hey, throw faster. My son's a pitcher. Coach says, hey, throw faster. He doesn't know what to do. He'll probably hurt himself trying to throw faster. So that coach, like we should show that person, this is how you do better. Those are the tools I use. I don't know what you use.
Yeah, Crucial Conversations is a big one for me. I would encourage, if I'm assuming this came from a Scrum Master or a coach, I think one of the most powerful things you can do as a Scrum Master or coach is let the team fail. If the team's not communicating, I know, especially the DNA of a Scrum Master or coach, is you want to help. You want to see the team succeed. You want to see them knock it out of the park. Oftentimes, the thing you have to do is let them fail. So if the team isn't communicating during a sprint, let it fail. Now, I would do some coaching on the other side, so Crucial Conversations, stuff like that. Another thing that you can do is in the moment coaching. So let's say you're in the pit and the teams are working and you hear somebody say something and you know QA should probably be involved with that. Send a Slack to the QA guy or gal and say, hey, did you hear that? Why don't you go talk to that person about that? Start kind of working individually through the team, kind of prompting them to go have that discussion or go have that discussion with them. Start modeling the behavior. Then you're going to start to see the team say, oh, this pattern, I'm starting to hear this. Let me do this again because I got a good thing from it. So modeling the behavior and letting them fail, and of course retrospectives are going to be key in talking about communication. There's a whole lot you can do with retrospectives. We have a card on that somewhere, which we'll probably get to. So on the converse of that, Josh, so we have a team that doesn't communicate well. We have a team that's got an alpha team member who's just strong. As a Scrum Master, how do I deal with that?
So this is another, I default to teams and education. So I try and educate that person on the challenges they're creating for the team. They're behaving in that way with the best intent. I've had a lot of folks like this, and they're amazing. But what happens is they're amazing, and the rest of the team just starts shutting down. They stop engaging in refinement. They stop engaging in planning because so-and-so is going to have the answer. I'll just wait. Stu's going to have the answer. Stu will know. You're laughing. You know Stu. Stu hated me for 6 months because I really pushed him on this. And I said, Stu, you're actually causing more problems than the solutions you're solving. He's like, what are you talking about? I got us all the answers. That refinement is done in 15 minutes because I had everything. Like, cool, but you just shut down 6 other people. We can't be single-threaded through you. Again, it's with the best intent because they want to get back to coding. They want to get through that refinement as quick as possible. They want to get that AC written as quickly as possible because they want to go write some code. But in reality, their actions are disruptive to the team. So you have to get them to understand the blast radius that they're creating by always having the answer. So my challenge to Stu was you're only allowed to speak in questions because he always had the answer. And he always thought it was best, was most effective. Again, moving things from left to right as quickly as possible. That's what he was trying to do. But if he wasn't there, things ground to a halt. So he had to learn how to be a good teammate and let others speak and support them. And if he recognized the team didn't have the right answer, he would ask questions and prompt them to find their way to the right answer. He was basically teaching them how to think like an architect, which is what Stu was. Stu was great. And he, over time, in speaking only in questions, taught them to think about the questions he would ask himself in his brain to get to the right answer. So in doing so, he basically trained 6 other people on how to be an architect and think like a team or tech lead. So that's the approach that I would take. The number one thing is they don't know they're causing a problem. They think they're doing the right thing. So you have to show them the problems that are being caused. They won't like it, I guarantee you. But you've got to stand firm and get them to understand the damage that's being done. Anything on that? I nailed it. A+?
A.
A,
I'll give you
okay.
an A.
All right, good.
So Josh, you've taken care of this alpha team member,
Yes.
but now your team is just not engaged in stand-ups or meetings. Like they're, help. How do I fix it? How do I get them engaged?
What's that? You didn't write that? So I work with Gabe right now 3 days a week, and we have this problem. It's a reality.
Well, maybe I should answer this question then?
Go ahead. Yeah, cheers. Yeah, it's because it's not getting solved, so we could take some advice from you.
I was half kidding. No, I got to think.
Yeah, too late now.
So the first thing I would do is I wouldn't go to the meeting. If you're a scrum master or a coach, don't go. Let the team figure it out. I know it sounds crazy, and it sounds like, what in the world are you talking about? I've done this multiple times with teams where if we had a stand-up, I would just kind of conveniently miss stand-up one day. Like, oops, I had a doctor's appointment or got pulled into another meeting or something, and I would ask the team, hey, what happened? How did stand-up go? I'm like, oh, it went okay. Or I'd get into a place where I could secretly watch them and I could see how things are going so I could observe. But it's amazing what happens when you're not leading. You want them engaged, stop leading it. Coach them. Take a coaching stance rather than a facilitation stance. Very different stances. You also have to make sure that this meeting is accomplishing something of value for them. If the stand-up isn't working and they don't like it, they don't see the need for it, stop it. Don't do it. So you know what? We're going to not do stand-ups for this sprint. And then what I guarantee what's going to happen is they're going to start to feel the pain of not having it. Or they're going to solve the problem in a more creative way. Right? People want to do great work. People are motivated. They want to do great things. Let's give them that environment, get out of the way, and let them figure out how to do it. Coach them along the way. Those are 2 kind of quick hit things I would suggest.
Wow. Nicely done. All right, so who's going to tell Bob he's fired from the podcast after that? I'm not going to do it. That's a fantastic answer. That's one thing that I think goes unsaid and unappreciated is the desire for people to do good things. Nobody wants to go into work and have a crappy day. They want to go in and come home at the end of the day feeling better. We feel better when we accomplish things. So give them the space. Assume that's their intent. So oftentimes, people with behaviors that we might not align with, we think they're coming in with malintent. They're not. Maybe you don't understand the reason that they're acting the way they are, but assume they're there to do good work. Give them the freedom to find that way to work. I went down this path once. I had a team, and we were doing Scrum, and they hated Scrum. And they came to me. They were kind of nervous when they came to me because I was like the Scrum guy. And they said, hey, we'd like to try Kanban. And I jumped out of my cube with excitement. They had no idea what was going on. I was so excited that they wanted to do something on their own. They wanted to take ownership. I knew Kanban was going to fail. I did. But I didn't care because they finally owned it. They owned it. They wanted to do it, and they were ready to fight for it. And boy, did they come ready to fight. And I really surprised them when I was so excited. But I said, yes, we should do that. Go do it right now. Make it happen. Let's talk in 6 weeks and see how it's working. They came back 6 weeks later. Actually, I think it was 4 weeks. We're going to stick with Scrum. But they owned it. They understood why now. You have to give them that space to try things and fail. And you might not have the right answer. Figure out why it's not working. Let them try things. Okay.
Anybody else curious how high Josh jumped?
Oh, just like that. Maybe a
Come on,
fullback.
that was hilarious.
It wasn't that good. It was good in your mind.
Josh played tight end in college. You didn't know?
A long time ago. Jumping wasn't involved. It was not basketball.
They didn't have face masks
Yeah.
at that point.
Oh,
That's how long ago. it was.
wow.
So,
Wow.
Josh, we're talking about ownership and teams communicating and working together. And I get this question all the time, and it's such a hard question to answer. But I think you have the answer.
Okay.
High performance teams. What's the secret sauce?
Apparently psychological safety. That's what he told me. To me, it's hiring for the right mindset. I go back to the book I talked about. It's a team sport. You really have to have people that want to be a part of the team. There are so many engineers that really don't have a desire to work with others. If they don't have a desire to work with others, they don't belong in your team. And that's okay. A lot of the jobs I've had over the past decade have been coming in and leading a transformation from something to Agile. And all those people that were there, they didn't agree to go work at that place to work in an Agile manner. They agreed to go work there in the way they'd always been working, which is kind of waterfall-y. And now you're transforming the fundamental way in which they work. Maybe they don't want to do that. That's okay. Have the discussion with them like, hey, this is the expectation we have of how we're going to work. We are going to be a team. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean you're a bad teammate. It's just that's not how you want to work. And you know what? You shouldn't spend every day coming in here and being unhappy because we're asking you to work the way you don't want to work. So let me help you find a job. I've done that a dozen times, and it's been fantastic. That person's happy. The team is happy because they know that person's not happy. It makes their job hard, but you've got to hit those things head on because you're fundamentally changing the way people work. And you have to appreciate that that's not what they signed up for X number of years ago when they joined. So having the psychological safety to have that conversation, not in an attacking manner, but to say, hey, listen, we work like this, now we work like this. Where do you want to be? If you want to be here, I will do everything in my power to help you get there. If you don't want to get there, that's okay. We're not trying to make everybody look and work the same way. If that doesn't work for you, cool. I will help you find a job that looks like that because I want you to be happy. So that's how you start it. Then you have to create the safety along the way. You as a leader, you have to be willing to hear the hard questions. You have to encourage when people ask you the difficult questions. When somebody asks you a difficult question in a team meeting, jump out like I did in that cube and celebrate it. Sometimes they'll be embarrassed, oftentimes they'll be embarrassed, but you need to promote the behaviors that you believe happen in a good and healthy team. That is good, healthy dialogue, no matter who the person you're having the dialogue with. If it's a CEO, if it's a board member, if it's a janitor, it doesn't matter. You should be able to have the same conversation. So you have to promote that. And if you see people not allowing that to happen, you can't permit that. You have to correct the behavior and say, we are a safe place. Safe conversations have to happen, and you have to set the example.
Yeah, and I think the underlying thing for psychological safety to exist is trust, right? I mean, the definition of safety is being able to take interpersonal risks without fear of retribution. So, like, I can take risks with Josh because we've built up trust over the last 4 years. You know, I can make jokes about how high he can jump, mainly because he can jump higher than I can. But you have to build that trust. You have to look at ways to build trust, some techniques. One of the things I do is quick check-in rounds in the beginning of every meeting. What was your favorite childhood hobby? What was your toughest high school subject? Just these little things that start building personal relationships. People get to know one another on a personal level. It's not just warm and fuzzy, ooey gooey stuff. Like, this is real. This is how we build trust. We get to know one another. We start to know the story behind the person so that when something happens, when Josh says, you weren't the last person I called, it's like, oh, you know what? I can trust that I'm not the last person he called.
Do you really?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. But you're building these relationships so that safety can be there, so that when I have to challenge Josh, like, Josh, I don't think that was a great answer, Josh will be like, you know what? I know he's coming from a good place because he cares about me. So any of those things, I know they sound warm and fuzzy, ooey gooey, but I promise you, they're going to build trust. And that's what you need to build psychological safety. That's what you need for a high-performing team. Without trust, nothing else matters. It just doesn't matter. So we've got 5 minutes left, right? We go to 11:50?
We go to 12, right? 12 or 11:50? 12? Oh, we got time.
Oh, we've got more time. Oh,
we got more time.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and so Eric is like he's going to probably, I don't know how he's going to handle this. So he's my own personal coach. We go to lunch a lot, and he calls me out on the bad things I'm doing. And my work in progress limit, my own personal work in progress limit, is terrible. Terrible. Here's an example. In 2018, I started 3 companies at the same time. That's a bad plan, right? And I would meet Eric for lunch, and he was like, what are you doing? Like, you tell teams to have a work in progress limit. You can't even do it for yourself. So I need somebody like that to keep slapping me in the back of the head, like, stop doing that, you dummy. But that only happened because we spent a lot of time together. And he was like, dude, you're really making life hard on yourself. But that was because he felt comfortable with that, and we had built up that relationship over time. So you have to do the things that enable that to happen. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen with one question. It just happens over time. And we as leaders have to force that to happen. You have to be intentional about creating that culture. If you don't focus on making that happen, it won't just happen, because it would have already had if it was easy. It's hard. So you've got to make it happen.
There's an old saying, maybe it's not old. I heard a saying somewhere, said trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. Like, it takes a long time to earn trust. And each of those exercises that you do with your teams, you're adding to the bucket. You're adding a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. If you guys haven't figured this out yet, this job of Scrum Master and Agile Coach is hard. We're dealing with people, and people take a long time to change. So we're in this for the long haul. This isn't, hey, we're going to build trust overnight and everything's going to be warm and fuzzy. You have to have a long-term strategy here, a long-term game plan of, all right, I want this team, brand new team, they're here. I want them to become high-performing. How am I going to get them there? What are the things that I'm going to do? I'm going to build trust. We're going to work on communication. We're going to work on crucial conversations. We're going to talk about, so I did this with the executive team I've been working with recently. We're about to have the first offsite. So, wow, I'm rambling.
It's okay. You're doing good. Knock it out.
My company is merging with 2 other companies, and we have a new executive team, just had a leadership offsite, and we're going to start talking about things that are going to be very, very challenging. So I laid out crucial conversations for them and talked about, hey, here's what it looks like when you're adding to the shared pool of meaning. Here's what it looks like when you're not. Here's what it looks like to withdraw. Here's what it looks like to attack. And just made them aware of it. And I said, if you start to feel that in yourself or in any of your teammates, I want you to yell safety check. Or just say safety check. You don't have to yell it. And they actually did it. They saw somebody withdrawing and they said, hold on, safety check. Let's back up here and let's reestablish safety so everybody on the team can add to the shared pool of meaning without fear of retribution or retaliation. We have to teach our teams this. This is not something that is known. Like, we don't teach this in grade school or college or high. Like, this is stuff that we have to teach. It's a long-term play. I hope that helped.
It did. So there's one thing I want to add to it. When you're working with engineers, they are used to being able to go in and make quick fixes. So they have that expectation of themselves. The thing that I tell them is there is no eric.config that you can go in and change a value from true to false, and now you're a different person. Right? You don't work like that. It's not like the code you work with every day. So one of the best coaching points I give is be patient with yourself. You are not code. Changing the way you operate takes time. You cannot make a change in code and check it in. It runs through CI/CD. 15 minutes later, there's a new product. Right? There's no new you in 15 minutes. There's a new you in 15 months, in 15 weeks. But that's not the world they live in. They are used to quick fixes, quick changes. So you've got to coach them to be patient. Executives deal in longer-term things, so that's a That's a different thing. They're more used to that. But engineers are used to, I'm going to go make a fix. And it's going to be done, and I can move on to the next thing. We don't work like that.
Well, so to have that environment, you have to have the right candidate, right? So when you're interviewing somebody, how do you know that they actually have an agile mindset as opposed to just using the vocabulary?
I've asked hundreds, maybe 1,000 people the same first question. What does agile mean to you? So the same question that we got asked here, I asked the same person. Do they talk about stand-ups? Do they talk about ceremonies? Do they talk about burn downs? Are they saying the buzzwords, or do they really understand the core of it's how we do work, it's how we move it from left to right, it's those kind of things. So that's the first question. The second thing that I do along the psychological safety is I ask them to build something. If they're an engineer, I say architect a website that's going to sell your favorite thing. If you're an agile coach, architect an organization. If you're a people manager, architect a team of people. I ask them to get up and draw on the board and talk me through why they're doing those things. And at some point along that description, they're going to say something, and it's going to be absolutely perfect. It's the right answer. I'm going to disagree with them. I'm going to tell them, I think that's the wrong decision, even though I know they're right. In that moment, I want to see how they handle that. Are they in a psychologically safe spot? I've had people that just like turn around and look at me with this like death stare. Like, no, that's the right thing. How dare you question me? Or because I'm the hiring manager, they say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll change it. Those aren't the people I hire. The people I hire stop, think about it, and say, well, Josh, I actually think this is the right way because of X, Y, and Z. I want them to have the confidence to say to the person that's hiring them, I think you're wrong, and here's why, and be able to back it up. If they can do that, then they can do that in a room of 20 engineers when they're arguing about the right way to build a testing framework or whatever it might be, right? I want a group of people that are confident and comfortable to have those safe discussions when it matters. Anybody can have those safe discussions at lunch. That doesn't matter. It matters when the stakes are high. So I put that out there and I challenge them and I say, are you willing to engage with me in a thoughtful dialogue about what the right answer is? When I know I'm wrong, but I want to see how they handle that. Cool. A+ yet?
A+. I'll give you A+ on that. I've actually used your interview techniques in my interviews, and they've helped out tremendously, especially the disagreeing with the candidate. It's amazing the type of response that you can get. All right, so we've got 7 minutes left.
Yes.
I have some really good questions. I'd like to do like a rapid fire.
Okay.
So if you could be concise.
Ooh, boy, okay.
I know you're playing the role of Bob today.
Yeah, I am. Who is not concise. Okay.
Trying to shift careers into the Agile space, but I'm currently outside the tech Agile industry. How do I get a job and gain experience?
There are many companies that have inclusive Agile organizations that if you go to meetups, we have hosted multiple people that want to get into the business. Just reach out and ask. Go to Scrum Master Focus Group or PO Focus Group or something like that and say that. And they will invite you and say, hey, I just want to come see what it looks like. Go see it. Understand it. You'll have a better idea of what you're looking for then. So that's what I would do.
Yep. I would also add find a mentor if you're trying to get in there. Like Josh is my mentor. I mentor a few folks. Happy to help folks if you are interested. I've actually hired people who do not have Scrum Master experience to be Scrum Masters, and they've been absolutely fantastic. I believe that you don't have to have technical background. I think you need to have the skills. How do Agile and long-term strategy work together? Can I answer this one?
Yeah.
I think they absolutely work together. I think one of the problems that we have with long-term strategy right now is the same way we do project planning. We try to plan out what we think the world is going to be in X amount of time when we don't know. I approach long-term strategy as a series of experiments to validate our hypothesis, and that is completely Agile. Rather than having a false sense of comfort that you actually know what's going to happen in 2 to 3 years, let's validate our hypothesis along the way. When an Agile team needs to report to a non-Agile team, which has hard deadlines.
So that's the question. What do you do when that happens?
Yep.
Run for the hills.
Run away.
Yeah. So that's the world that Bob and I as consultants live in. We get called into the situations when shit's bad, right? Like that's the gig. And it's hard conversations with those leaders that are having the unagile behaviors. I'm not even saying they're bad. They're just different behaviors than what Agile team needs. And that takes crucial conversations with the leaders to get them to understand. Again, you have to take it from an educational point of view of here's the effect you're having. $100 says they don't know it. $100 says they think they're doing the right thing. You need to sit down with them and explain to them the collateral damage that they're creating in operating the way that they should. So that's step one, get them to recognize it. Then step two is you have to coach them along the way on how they should change the way they operate. That's that .config file. That's going to take time because they've worked that way for a decade and they've been successful. And they turn and look at you like, I turned this into a $100 million company working this way. Cool. Well, if you want to get to a $200 million company, you can't keep working this way.
All right. How to best break up API dev stories into deliverable stories that provide business value and can be completed in 2-week sprint. I would turn your attention to, I think it's called Agile Requirements by Dean Leffingwell. Is that the name of the book? Anybody know? It's something requirements, Dean Leffingwell. He has 10 strategies for breaking down user stories. Highly recommend looking at that. That would be the quick answer to that one. So a lot of these, I think you guys have actually done on the Metacast. Mm-hmm. So can I plug the Metacast? Are you going to plug the Metacast?
You can, then I'll plug some more.
Okay. So someone asked about squad-based metrics. I know you guys just did a series on metrics. Does SAFe work? Josh and I have it works. It depends on what you want it to do. But I know you guys talked about scaling frameworks.
Yeah.
On the Metacast.
Yeah, so we have 150 episodes. We first attacked SAFe like 5 years ago. Bob went to a SAFe class and came back pissed off. I had never seen Bob like that before. Over time, we've learned the value. SAFe, as it was introduced to Bob, was very prescriptive in many ways. And a lot of the things that I teach leans on SAFe. I think there's some really great parts of SAFe. I don't believe SAFe is right for everybody. To me, the biggest problem SAFe has is it gets billed as a silver bullet. It's going to solve all your problems if you just follow this fancy poster with like 75 words. And their website has some good detail on things. But I think you have to make it your own. You have to own it and figure out what works for you. So SAFe can work. Bob and I have been doing this for a decade. We want questions. So we have done this format before, and we've taken leftover questions and done them in episodes. So it's important to us to give back. We do this because we just want to make a difference. If you like this Q&A, you have more questions, every Friday at 11 a.m., I'm on Twitch doing the same thing. You can come in and post your questions in the chat. Eric's usually there correcting me. Gabe is usually there correcting me. I'm just kind of the guide where questions get asked, and there's about a half dozen coaches that are there every Friday answering questions, and I'm just there like, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. That's a great answer. I got to go. So that's pretty much how that hour goes. But it's a fantastic resource, and I really encourage you guys to take part of that. Our podcast is there. Bob is fantastic. Like I said, unfortunately, Bob couldn't be here. Bob is the mentor that I needed. Bob taught me a million things, and when I have questions, that's who I go to. So reach out to him on Twitter or the podcast or however you like. He's just a fantastic person. He has helped dozens of people get into the Agile space. I have done my part to help as much as I can, but not as much as Bob has. So that is it for us, unless you have anything.
The only last thing I wanted to say was there's a couple questions about executive teams. If you missed the keynote, I would highly encourage you to listen to Doug's keynote this morning about getting executives on board. I also work with executive teams, so happy to, if you had questions about that, happy to follow up with you. But I would encourage you guys, Metacast, Twitch, like that is a huge opportunity to get real-time coaching. And it's, real coaching can be expensive. This is free. And you have people who are actually doing the work, answering the questions for you. So take advantage of it. Check out the Agile Leadership Network. Be a part of it. And let's do great things together.
Good deal. Thank you. Yeah, 10 seconds. Nice word.